Private health is skyrocketing, wages are falling behind, and tonight the reality of Australia's cost of living crisis has been laid bare.
Well, there is another cost of living blow for Australian families this morning, with health insurance premiums due for the largest rise in nearly a decade.
On the drive to hospital, they learned Bupa wouldn't pay, so they borrowed $30,000 off friends.
And then we had to remortgage our house to pay everyone back.
I ended up, for my 3 surgeries, it was about $7,000 of out-of-pocket costs.
Did you have the money to pay for that gap?
No, I absolutely didn't. I had to rely on my parents.
If you are over 65 and you have held private hospital cover most of your working life, the discount that makes it affordable is being taken off your bill. From the 1st of April 2027, the extra rebate people your age have had since 2004 disappears. The government says that costs you about $250 a year. Hold on to that number, because it is not the one that lands on your renewal notice, and the difference comes out of your savings. Listen to what the industry's own polling found when it asked people your age what they would do.
Almost 40% of over 65s are considering dropping their cover due to this rebate change. That's according to new polling commissioned by the industry's peak body. The change
2 in 5. That is not a survey about whether people like a policy. That is 2 in every 5 older Australians with hospital cover saying that if this goes ahead, they are out. Here is the machinery in plain terms. The rebate is a discount the government pays towards your premium. Since 2004, it has been bigger if you are older, because older people claim more and premiums for older people cost more. If you are under 65, you get back up to 24%. Between 65 and 69, up to 28. From 70, up to 32. From April 2027, everybody gets the same 24%, judged on income alone. So a retired couple in Ballarat and a working couple in Ballarat on the same income will pay the same. That is the argument, and it is not a stupid one. But the retired couple has been paying premiums for 30 years, and the working couple has not. The Health Minister, Mark Butler, told the ABC in April that the change would raise $3 billion over 4 years, and that the money would go to aged care. 3.2 million people. That is the size of the group being asked to carry it. Listen to how a consumer affairs reporter broke this April's rise down, level of cover by level of cover.
It means a family with an average-priced gold hospital policy could pay $330 more annually. Those with silver cover face an increase of $166, while bronze policies are expected to rise by $120.
$330, $166, $120. Those are the tier averages the funds put in the papers when the April rise was approved. And they are all built off one headline figure, 4.41%, the biggest approved rise since 2017. Now hold that against what actually arrived on people's renewal notices this year, because they are not the same thing at all, and the distance between the two is not an accident. That is the second question in this video, and I am going to take my time with it, because until you understand how a 4% rise becomes a 25% rise, none of the rest of this makes sense. Start with what happened to one couple who thought they were covered.
It was just cruel. I'm just a little fish, and they make so much money.
Gold, silver, bronze.
The Coxes are among 360,000 Australians who've dropped gold cover in the past 5 years as premiums spiralled.
Cox slipped on a nature strip and destroyed her shoulder socket. She and Trevor had held cover with Bupa for decades. They found out on the drive to hospital that the joint replacement was not covered. They borrowed $30,000 from friends to get the operation done, and then remortgaged the family home to pay their friends back. Marie was first injured in 2022. They are still repaying that mortgage. They had downgraded from gold cover because gold had become unaffordable. Joint replacements went with it. Their new policy also had no accident cover, the one thing that would have caught a fall on a nature strip. And here is where you might switch off, because it sounds like someone else's bad luck. So let me point it at you directly. The Coxes were not careless people. They did the responsible thing, which was to keep paying something rather than nothing. And the something they kept paying is the shape almost everybody ends up in when the top tier gets too dear. Whatever tier you moved down to when your last renewal notice arrived, that is the tier that will be tested the first time your body fails. Not the one you had in your 50s. 360,000 Australians have left gold cover in the past 5 years. Ask why gold got that expensive.
Well, if you've had a play on the government's website, which is good, the privatehealth.gov.au, it shows that for a gold hospital cover for a family, it can cost up to $17,000 a year. So that's crazy. How can someone afford that?
$17,000 a year for the level of cover that pays for a hip, a knee, a heart procedure, cataracts, the things that happen to people after 60. That is not a premium anymore. That is a second mortgage on being old. The consumer group Choice went through the 5 biggest funds this year: Bupa, HCF, HBF, Medibank and NIB, and compared the headline rise with what each tier actually did. Basic, Bronze and Silver went up between 2.6 and 3.3%. Gold went up 13.3% on average. HCF's Hospital Optimal Gold cover went up 25% in every state and territory, which is more than 5 times the number the country was told. So the 4.41% was true, and it was also useless. It is a weighted average across every policy a fund sells. Load the cheap end, and the top end can be anything you like. And listen to what the private hospital sector says the biggest fund in the country is doing to its own members, while all of that is being argued about.
Lose out.
What they're really doing is they're removing choice from their members. And what Bupa's really in effect doing with this is saying, well, you can choose your specialist, but you're going to bear a lot of costs with that specialist unless they go to a hospital that we hold a contract with.
That is the part of this business the renewal notice never mentions. While you are working out whether you can absorb another few $100s, your fund is in a room with the hospital you would be admitted to, arguing about what it will pay. The ABC obtained 2 of Bupa's contracts with private hospitals. They show hospitals having to get the insurer's permission before opening a new service or a new wing, having to name the doctors involved, and having to estimate how many of that insurer's patients might use it. Bupa Health Insurance made a $594 million profit in the last financial year, the largest of any health fund in the country, and it holds around 4.5 million members. None of that is illegal. All of it decides whether the hospital near you still has a maternity unit, a mental health unit, or a surgical list on the day you need one. Private hospitals have been closing around the country while this goes on. But the sharpest version of this is not about buildings. It is about the moment a person who has paid for 30 years is told no.
It's right. You're never fully covered, but people don't realise that until they go to use it. You're suffering from emotional turmoil, and they prey on it. That's how it felt.
Broad was 30 when she was diagnosed with an aggressive breast cancer. She was paying $55 a fortnight for mid-level hospital cover. Her insurer refused to pay $8,652 for the breast reconstruction after her mastectomy on the grounds that it was cosmetic. The fund eventually paid it. Across 3 surgeries, she was still about $7,000 out of pocket, and she did not have it. She borrowed from her parents. Read that last sentence back and put your own age on it. A 30-year-old has parents to fall back on. At 72, the money that covers a $7,000 gap is the money that was supposed to last you the rest of your life. And the gap is not a rare event. The average out-of-pocket payment for a single hospital episode reached $511 in the March quarter this year, up almost 9% in 12 months. For orthopedic work, the hips and knees and shoulders, the average is $850 an episode. Why can a surgeon charge whatever produces that gap? Because nothing stops them.
So, what does Frank's surgeon charge? Basically, whatever she likes. When it comes to fees, medical specialists in Australia aren't constrained by regulations.
Whatever she likes. Medicare covers 3/4 of a scheduled fee that is set well below what surgeons actually charge. Your fund is required by law to cover a further 25% of that same scheduled fee, and not 1 cent more unless it has struck a deal with your particular surgeon. Everything above that is yours. On a $10,000 hip replacement with a scheduled fee of about $1,300, Medicare pays $975. The fund's legal minimum is a few hundred more. The remainder, more than $8,000, sits with the patient unless a no-gap deal happens to exist. And the fees people were not told about in advance, the ones that arrive after the operation, have gone from an average of $418 to $685 in 5 years. So you have 3 prices in this system: the one the government announces, the one your fund charges, and the one you discover in a letterbox 6 weeks after surgery. Only the last one is real. Now I want to answer the question I left open, which is how a 4% rise becomes a 25% rise, because the mechanism has a name and it was legal until this year. It is called phoenixing. A fund closes an existing policy to new members, then opens a brand new policy, often with the same name and the same benefits, at a higher price. The closed policy still exists, with you in it, and it is no longer part of the calculation that produces the advertised average. The new one starts from a higher base. Do that for a few years and the numbers separate. Choice went back over 5 years of price rises. The cumulative government-approved increase across that period was 14.8%. The actual price of gold cover across the 5 biggest funds rose 71.1%. That is not a rounding difference. That is roughly 5 times the approved figure on the exact tier that older Australians need and younger. Australians do not. The government introduced legislation this year to shut the loophole. It ran for years before that, and none of the money it moved is coming back. The result is measurable. The share of Australians holding comprehensive cover was 39% back in 2020. By the end of last year, it was 28%. People did not stop wanting protection. They stopped being able to afford the only tier that provides it. And that leads to the third question, which is worse than the first two. What is actually inside the cover people move down to? The Australian Medical Association publishes a report card on private health insurance every year, using the regulator's own data. 15 years ago, almost no hospital policy carried exclusions. In the most recent report card, 68.4% of private hospital treatment policies no longer cover all types of care. More than 2/3. Which means that for most people holding a card in their wallet, there is a list of things that card does not do. And the list is where the profit is. An orthopedic surgeon interviewed by the ABC put it plainly. People find they are not covered for the particular procedure, and it comes as a shock. The shock is by design, not fraud and not a conspiracy, just a tier structure in which the cheap policies are cheap because they exclude the expensive events, And the expensive events are the ones that happen to you after 65. Joint replacements, cataracts, cardiac work. The private system performs nearly 3/4 of all joint replacements in this country, so the exclusion is not theoretical. That is what a policy is. It is a list of what will not be paid. And sometimes it is not even that. Sometimes the claim is inside the policy and it still gets refused. In December last year, the competition regulator, the ACCC, announced that the federal court had ordered Bupa to pay $35 million in penalties. Between May 2018 and August 2023, the court found, Bupa told members they were not entitled to benefits for any part of a claim, when in fact they were entitled to benefits for the parts their policy did cover. Where 2 procedures were done at once and one was covered, the fund rejected the whole thing. Read the regulator's own words on what that did. Some members cancelled, delayed, or went without necessary treatment because they were incorrectly told they were not entitled. The court also found the conduct unconscionable, which is about the most serious finding available under consumer law, and attached a 5-year injunction. Bupa has so far repaid more than $14.3 million across more than 4,100 claims. Sit with the shape of that. 4,100 claims that were valid, refused, and only repaid because a regulator went to court. And if you own your home outright tonight, and you have been listening to all of this as other people's misfortune, here is the part that should change how you hear it. Every person in those 4,100 claims had a policy. Every one of them had paid every premium. Being a careful person who honors their obligations is not the protection. It is the qualification for being in the group this happens to. So the obvious response is to move down a tier and save the money. That is what the Coxes did. It is what 360,000 people who left gold did. Here is what the arithmetic actually does. You drop to silver and save perhaps $1,000 a year. You have also just removed joint replacements and possibly accident cover from your policy. The first hip you need costs you somewhere north of $8,000 out of pocket or a public waiting list. Roughly 8 years of the saving gone on one operation, and that is if nothing else happens. Meanwhile, the rebate change is landing on exactly this decision. The insurer's peak body, Private Healthcare Australia, modelled the combined effect and found that Australians over 70 holding gold hospital cover could see increases above 21% from April 2027, against about 4% for people under 65. More than $1,600 a year for a couple, $807 for an individual. And more than 400,000 pensioners hold cover in this country, people whose income does not move when a premium does. Which raises the last question, and it is the one nobody in this argument answers honestly. If the cover is unaffordable and half of it is excluded anyway, why not simply leave and use Medicare like everyone else? Because the public system is where everybody else already is, and it is full. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare publishes the waiting times every year. In 2024 to 25. Across the 25 most common procedures, half of public patients waited 53 days or more. For patients whose admission was funded by private health insurance, the figure was 28 days, nearly twice as long. And that is the median. 6% of patients waited more than a year. A total knee replacement runs to a median of about 240 days. 940,000 people were added to those lists in a single year, and the government's own modelling expects 44,000 more to arrive from this policy alone, with the insurers arguing that is a serious undercount. So the door marked exit opens onto a queue. That is not an accident either. It is the same door the rebate was created in 2004 to keep people out of. If you are trying to work out what to do, there are 3 honest versions of the next 2 years. The best case. You are on a policy your fund has not phoenixed. Your income puts you in the top rebate band, and the change costs you the $250-odd the government quoted. You prepay 12 months before the 1st of April, which locks the old price for a year. You read the exclusions list once, properly, and you find your policy still covers the joints and the heart. That is a manageable year. The realistic case. You are over 70 on gold cover. You get a letter in early 2027, and the number on it is somewhere between $800 and $1,600 higher than this year. You do what almost everyone does, which is downgrade rather than cancel, and you do not read the new exclusions closely because the letter is 19 pages long. Nothing bad happens for a while. The worst case is the Coxes. You downgrade, you keep paying, you believe you are covered, and you find out otherwise on the drive to hospital. The operation still has to happen. The money comes out of the house. None of this was weather. Every step had a signature on it. The federal government approved this year's average rise, knowing it was an average across tiers and not a cap on any of them. The regulator allowed phoenixing to run for years before legislation was introduced this year. The funds designed the tier structure that puts joint replacements behind the most expensive product and then priced that product far above the approved increase, every year for 5 years. And the same government that spends around $8 billion a year on this rebate has decided to take the older share of it away from the 1st of April 2027, and the Health Minister said so in his second reading speech to Parliament in June. That is the answer to the question I have been holding since the first minute. The reason a 4% rise arrives at your house as 21 or 25% is not inflation, and it is not your age. It is a set of decisions, each defensible on its own, that only ever point one way. Every one of them moves cost off an institution and onto a household. And the households they land on hardest are the ones that did what they were told to do for 30 years, which was to take out cover, keep it, and never claim if they could help it. So, the short version, and then I will let you go. From the 1st of April 2027, the higher rebate for Australians over 65 ends. 3.2 million people are affected. The government says the cost is around $250 a year. The insurers' modelling says it is up to $1,600 for a couple on the cover most retirees hold. The advertised premium rise is an average, not a promise, and gold cover has risen 71.1% in 5 years against an approved 14.8%. More than 2/3 of hospital policies now exclude something, and the public system you would fall back on has 940,000 people joining the queue every year. 3 things worth doing before April, none of which require you to trust anybody. First, find your policy document and read the exclusions, not the benefits. The benefits page is marketing, the exclusions page is the contract. Second, if you can afford it, prepay 12 months before the 1st of April. It is the only lever a member actually holds, and it locks this year's price. Third, if your cover has been closed to new members, ring and ask what the identical open policy costs. If it is cheaper for the same benefits, you are in a phoenixed product, and you can move. That is the state of it. Now I want to hear from you, because this one is going to land on a lot of kitchen tables between now and April. What did your last renewal notice actually go up by? And what is the one thing you found out too late that your policy does not